whakarongo mai ki te hōtaka Tōranga Pū. It's the Tōranga Pū Show with Tāmati, Eru and Muki every Wednesday 5 to 7 p.m. on te Upoko o te Ika.
This is the Tōranga Pū Show here on Upoko o te Ika. And on the line we've got National MP, Mr. Goldsmith. It's good to have you on the program, sir.
Yeah, tēnā koe.
Kia ora. Well, I know that National's been making some noise for a little while now about whether or not we should be moving down to level 2. Can you kind of expand on that for us?
Oh, yeah, look, I mean, obviously we've had this extraordinary situation with the COVID-19 and, I think everybody broadly agreed at the start, 7 weeks ago, that it was important to close the place down and get on top of the disease. Now, we remember the Prime Minister talked about tens of thousands of deaths, and so people were pretty scared. With each passing week, of course, we've seen the benefits of being a small, isolated country in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by sea and seagulls, and Australia and New Zealand have both managed to get on top of it pretty well once we got on top of the border and isolating people coming in from overseas. And so we simply make the point that with each passing week, we need to reassess the situation and make sure that we can get back to work as soon as we can. Because it's basically costing about $1.4 billion a week when we're in level 3.
Yes.
In terms of lost economy. And so you don't want to be in there any longer than you need to be. And there's quite a contrast if you look across the Tasman to Australia, country most similar to ours. They kept on with construction, with mining, with retail and a whole lot of stuff right throughout. And their health outcome has been pretty much the same, but they haven't done quite so much damage to their economy. So, we're gently encouraging the government to move more quickly.
Now, there's probably some good arguments for some regions to actually come down a level. For example, places such as Gisborne, the Wairarapa and Whanganui, regions that are showing fewer sort of cases of COVID-19. Do you think that they may have a good case for dropping down to level 2 sooner?
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I think there probably was an argument for that earlier, a couple of weeks back. But, frankly now, I think the whole country can shift down should be in level 2 and it should be a pretty liberal level 2 so we can get on with things and people can make a living right throughout the country. But the critical thing, of course, is ensuring that we can do the testing and the tracing quickly to get on top of any little new outburst. And so that's the critical thing, and that should be in place. And then we should, rather than thinking of reasons why not to come out of lockdown, we should be asking ourselves, well, why are we still locked up? And so that's the difference in mindset. But yeah, and it's particularly acute in places like the East Coast, where there's literally been nobody with the disease for a long time.
Yeah. What's our national stance on creating a trans-tasman bubble?
Oh, we're very keen on it. Sooner the better. The worst hit industry is tourism and hospitality, and they're obviously hugely affected by this. Australia is our biggest source of tourists, and so if we can open up the Australian trade, then that will go a long way towards putting some life back into regional New Zealand, particularly where many places are really dependent on people getting out and about and visiting. So if it's pretty obvious in the next few weeks that both Australia and New Zealand have got the disease in a manageable level, the Aussies have been quicker in terms of getting a tracing app and things like that in place, and their testing and tracing systems have been pretty good. If we can get up to that standard, then there's no reason why we can't expand our bubble, and that would be good.
Now, National's always been known as a party that's been good to small and medium-sized businesses, and I see that your leader, Simon Bridges, is thinking about giving some GST relief to some of those businesses affected?
Yes, well, see, small businesses really carried the brunt of the economic sort of costs of this, and there'll be lots of your listeners and big parts of the Maori economy in that small business space, and they've been told that you cannot trade for 7 weeks now, particularly some of the retail and hospitality areas, and that's impossibly difficult to manage. And so they've had the wage subsidy, but of course all that money has gone to wages. But small businesses have many other costs, rent and power, and the mortgage bills and lease payments for various other things, and that is causing a few of them to fall over and collapse. And so we see the priority is it's much easier to save an existing job than it is to create a new one after the damage. And so we're trying to save jobs and keep businesses going. Now, the government announced their scheme, which was sort of loaning money through banks or IRD to businesses. But our point is that desperately struggling small businesses, they don't actually need more debt, and they don't want more debt. What they need is some cash to get them through this extraordinary situation. And so our view is that you should be able to claim back GST pay in the second half of last year up to $100,000 to give them the cash that they need to get through this critical period. And then hopefully when we open up, they can start trading again and get back on their feet.
Look, I know that you're the finance spokesperson, but what are your thoughts about legislation introduced into Parliament this week, in the hope to bringing immigrants who are in the turmoil because of COVID-19, helping them out? You're probably familiar with what I'm talking about, aren't you, Mr. Goldsmith?
Yeah. Look, I mean, the whole thing has been pretty extraordinary. Where you've had the sudden closing of the borders, and you've got tens of thousands of people here on sort of short-term work visas who have been stuck here and struggling to survive, and then you've got lots of New Zealanders overseas in the same situation, and then you've got the situation. I don't know if you saw the Transmission Gully, for example, the big roading projects. Yes. Some of the key people have gone back overseas and they can't get back, and so. There's lots of things, practical things that we've got to sort out in terms of immigration rules and regulations over the next couple of months, so as to get things back on track. I think there will be a bit of a shift in the flow of migration into New Zealand over the next year, because we unfortunately there will be larger numbers of people unemployed in New Zealand, and so we obviously should have a priority of getting them to work first before we bring in migrant labour. But there are, of course, many particular skills that we're going to continue to need for things as well. So you've got to have a bit of a pragmatic mix over the next little while.
Yeah. We're into our second day now of 0 cases of COVID-19 being presented. I mean, are you generally happy with the way that the government's handled this? If we compare ourselves to other countries under 6 million people, I think there's got to be some sort of acknowledgement there that New Zealand is doing pretty good.
Yeah, I think New Zealanders have done a great job. On the whole, people have stayed at home, and they've looked after themselves and their family. They've not spread it around, and we've got on top of it pretty quickly. And I think the government has done mostly the right things, and we've supported them at most stages. I think we just got to see the context and recognise that we did as a country have real natural advantages. We're spread out and very distant from the rest of the world, and so we should do well, and we have done well. But I suppose what we don't want to do is just over-egg it and turn what is potentially a $20 or $30 or $40 billion disaster into a $80 or $90 or $100 billion disaster by dragging it out too long and suddenly deciding that all spending is good and we'll just sort of just open the taps and throw money everywhere and be sort of thoughtless about it. So that's why the basic sort of rules of what makes successful countries work haven't changed. But overall, I think all New Zealanders can be proud of our achievements and getting on top of this so far, and recognising that we continue to need to be vigilant as well. So because we certainly don't want to go backwards badly. So we've got to continue to wash our hands and be careful what we're doing, and treat each other with respect when it comes to not turning up sick and coughing over everybody and all those sorts of things that I think we're learning about.
Yes. Just to wrap up, Mr. Goldsmith, if you were the Finance Minister, what are a couple of things that you may have done differently?
Look, the mantra or the thing that the government keeps saying is that we went hard and early. And I suppose the point we would make is, well, actually, when it came to the border, I think everybody heard the stories of Kiwis returning home and then going off into self-isolation, and rather than quarantine, and the police were supposed to check up on them and they never did. And so we would have been a bit tighter earlier on just making sure that we didn't bring the disease in from overseas. And in hindsight, you could say that we probably would have been sensible. And then, but we certainly went very hard on the lockdown and harder than Australia. Now, it's easy to criticise in hindsight, and so we supported the initial decision to go into lockdown as it was. But I do think we probably would have been a little bit faster to respond and say, hang on a moment, the Aussies have done it differently and their outcomes are very similar. We can afford to do more stuff, more construction, more retail, get more people working sooner, so as to reduce the damage. And it's not, when people talk about the economy as if it's some sort of thing out there. It's not. It's you and me. It's our livelihoods. It's our opportunity to get a job and to look after ourselves and our family and our whānau, and to have the pride that comes with building up a small business. And there's nothing more terrible than to see people who have been working for a decade or 30 years to build up their little business, and to see it sort of wiped out over 2 months because they just can't keep the thing afloat because they can't trade is a very distressing thing. So we want to avoid all that if we possibly can.
All right, Paul Goldsmith, the finance spokesperson from the National Party. Look, thank you very much for your time.
All the best. Nice to talk.
And you too. Kia ora, thank you.
It's the Tōranga Pū Show, politics with a pūkana.